single dad tried to stop his son from inviting a stranger to dinner, didn't know she was a CEO. "Would you like to have dinner with us, ma'am? We have space." The voice came from below, clear, warm, and utterly unexpected. Evelyn Cross froze mid-step. Her heels had barely touched the edge of the plaza when the question reached her ears, slicing through the cold Manhattan wind like a ribbon of warmth. She looked down, and there he was, a boy no older than 6, cheeks flushed pink from the cold curls damp with snow, clutching a paper bag with grease stains and magic in his eyes. "Excuse me," she asked, blinking like someone roused from a trance. The boy beamed. "I said we saved a seat. Me and Daddy. It's Christmas, you know. You shouldn't be alone." She stared at him. Her hands, clad in lambskin gloves, tightened around the leather strap of her Hermes bag. The weight of the city of expectation of 20 years building an empire suddenly felt laughably fragile under the earnest gaze of a child with holes in his mittens. No one had spoken to her like that in years, certainly not without asking for something in return. From the corner of her eye, she saw people bustling by, heads down, arms full of shopping bags and distractions. Her own security detail hovered discreetly by the black car idling at the curb. But the boy just stood there, patient, hopeful. Evelyn opened her mouth to reply what exactly she didn't know when a voice barked from across the plaza. Leo, a man in a frayed wool coat, was hurrying toward them, face taut with worry. "You can't just—" He stopped short when he saw her. Evelyn Cross. In the flesh. The woman whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune. The billionaire who had once said in an interview, "Compassion doesn't scale. Systems do." He looked down at his son, then back at her, and his jaw set. Protective. Wary. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping between them. "He didn't mean to bother you." "I wasn't," Evelyn said before she could stop herself. Bothered. There was a beat of silence. Snowflakes swirled between them like curious eavesdroppers. Nathan Hale gave her a skeptical once-over. "Well, still, we'll get out of your way." Leo tugged at his father's coat. "But Daddy, she looks sad." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Nathan winced, embarrassed. "Leo." But Evelyn knelt a movement that surprised even herself and looked Leo in the eye. "Why do you think I'm sad?" Leo shrugged, matter of fact. "Because your coat is expensive, but your eyes are empty." Nathan groaned. "We're going. Come on." But Evelyn's voice stopped him. "Where's dinner?" Nathan blinked. "What, you said you had a seat," she said to Leo. "Where is it?" Leo grinned. "It's not far. We live in the red brick building with the lights that blink too much. Daddy says they're possessed." Nathan let out a breath. "You don't have to do this." "I know," Evelyn replied, "but I want to." He studied her, unsure whether this was a setup, a stunt, a trap, but she didn't flinch under his scrutiny. Only a flicker in her gaze, something like vulnerability or maybe exhaustion, betrayed her resolve. "Okay," he said slowly, "but we don't do fancy." Evelyn straightened. "Good. I've had enough fancy to last 3 lifetimes." The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up that smelled faintly of old paint and honest struggle. Evelyn had to duck slightly to avoid a cracked light fixture in the stairwell. Leo bounded ahead, humming something about snowmen who liked spaghetti. Nathan unlocked the door. "It's not much. It's not nothing," she said. Inside, warmth greeted them, not just from the radiator rattling in protest, but from the lived-in piece of mismatched cushions, a worn blanket draped over a sunken couch, and a miniature Christmas tree made of cardboard and tinsel. Leo pointed proudly. "That's our tree. I made it at school. It's got a dinosaur star." Evelyn let out a surprised laugh. Not a polite chuckle. A real one. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I'll see if there's enough spaghetti left." "I'm not hungry," she said, and then corrected herself. "Not for food." He paused, glancing at her over his shoulder, but he said nothing and busied himself in the kitchenette. Evelyn walked to the table. It had 2 chairs. One of them, she noticed, had an extra cushion folded neatly on the seat. She touched it gently. Leo noticed. "That one's yours. You didn't know I was coming." Leo tilted his head. "Sometimes people show up, so we always leave one." A pause. "For Mom," he added softly. Evelyn turned. Nathan froze mid-pour of marinara sauce. "Leo." "It's okay," Leo said. "She died when I was a baby, but Daddy says her chair should never be empty, just in case someone needs it." Evelyn sat down slowly, the cushion warm beneath her. Nathan placed a plate of spaghetti and buttered toast in front of her like it was a 4-course meal. "Bon appetit," he said dryly. She twirled the noodles silently. Leo sat across from her chewing with enthusiasm. "You don't have to finish it all," he offered. "But if you cry, it means you like it." Nathan nearly choked on his toast. Evelyn smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." They ate in companionable quiet. No business talk. No transactions. Just a boy who believed in chairs that waited and a man who cooked with care he didn't know he still had. When the meal was done, Evelyn stood and placed her napkin down gently. "Thank you," she said. Nathan nodded. "But Leo." He reached out and pressed something into her hand. A folded piece of paper. She opened it. It was a crayon drawing of 3 people at a table. The woman had bright yellow hair and a big heart drawn over her chest. Underneath, in messy handwriting, "Miss Evelyn, your chair is always here." She looked at the boy, then at the man who had built a life from scraps and still managed to raise a child who believed in empty chairs. "Good night," she whispered. And for the first time in 20 years, Evelyn Cross walked away from a dinner table, feeling full. The city returned to noise and glass the next morning. Evelyn Cross stood in her penthouse kitchen holding a porcelain coffee mug she didn't remember pouring. Below her, the skyline shimmered like a promise she no longer believed in. Her phone buzzed. Meetings, memos, board approvals. But all she saw was crayon. The drawing Leo had given her was still folded neatly beside the sink, untouched since she laid it there the night before like something sacred. 3 stick figures. 1 heart, 1 table, and a seat. Just for her. She should have dismissed it as sentimentality, a passing indulgence, something soft and foolish. But all night she had dreamt of tinsel dinosaurs and buttered toast, of mismatched chairs and the sound of a child saying, "You don't look lonely when you smile." No one had ever told her that. Not even once. Later that afternoon, Evelyn sat alone in her office on the 57th floor behind a desk carved from imported walnut. The city sprawled behind her, vast and cold. Her assistant, Melissa, peeked in. "Board's waiting. Should I hold them?" Evelyn shook her head. "No. Let them wait. 10 minutes." Melissa blinked, surprised, but nodded. Evelyn reached into her handbag and pulled out the drawing again. She stared at it, then took out a pen. She traced over the words, "Your chair is always here," slowly, as if committing them to memory. For a moment, she thought about sending a thank you. A gift basket, something polished. But it felt wrong, like packaging up a wildflower and mailing it to someone who only knew real soil. Instead, she stood, took a deep breath, and reached for her coat. "Cancel the meeting," she told Melissa on her way out. "Tell them I'm attending something more important." The walk-up looked even smaller in daylight. She hesitated outside, staring at the building like it might disappear if she looked too hard. This wasn't her world. It wasn't meant to be. But she rang the buzzer anyway. After a long pause, the door cracked open. Nathan's eyes met hers through the gap. There was a flicker, recognition, disbelief, and something far more cautious. "Miss Cross," he said slowly. "To what do we owe the honor?" She raised the drawing. "I came to return this." And the scarf Leo forgot. He opened the door wider. "You could have mailed it. I don't like mailing things that matter." That gave him pause. "Leo's at school," he said after a beat. "I pick him up at 3. "I'm not here for him," she said quietly. "Not just him." Nathan leaned on the frame. You're really not used to being turned away, are you? No, she admitted. A beat of silence stretched between them. Come in, he said finally. I have 15 minutes before I go fix a leaking pipe across town. The apartment hadn't changed, and yet it felt different without Leo's chatter. Evelyn sat at the same table. The chair was still there, the one Leo had claimed for her. Nathan poured her a cup of coffee, rough hands surprisingly gentle with the chipped mug. You run $1 billion empire, he said, sliding the cup toward her. And you're here in a place where the heater sings opera every morning. I've had enough silence, she said. Opera's an upgrade. Nathan smirked. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, she said. You're not angry. Not yet. She tilted her head. Nathan sat across from her. I'm trying to figure out why a woman like you would step into our world. Is it guilt, curiosity? Or are you just tired of polished tables with no one to talk to? Her reply was soft. Maybe I just miss the sound of being needed. Nathan didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said, That's a dangerous thing to say. Needing and being needed, those are different roads. One of them has a dead end. Evelyn's eyes flickered. I used to believe that. I don't know if I do anymore. The air between them shifted. Not warmer, not cooler, just heavier with truths too big to name. You don't have to rescue us, Nathan said. We're not a charity case. I know. You're not here to fix us, are you? She shook her head. Maybe I came here because, for once, I didn't feel like the one being fixed. Nathan stared at her, unreadable. Finally, he stood. I have to go. She stood too. Will you tell Leo I stopped by? Nathan walked her to the door. He'll want to know. But if you're planning to vanish after this, do us a favor, don't come again. Evelyn paused, hand on the doorknob. I won't disappear. Rich people always say that, Nathan replied. She turned, met his gaze. Her voice, when it came, was steel and softness braided into one. Then maybe it's time someone didn't. That night, Nathan found Leo sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, coloring furiously. Miss Evelyn came back, Leo said without looking up. I know. She didn't take the picture. Nathan frowned. She left it. Leo held up a new drawing. This time the three people at the table had more detail. Evelyn's stick figure wore glasses. Nathan's had a coffee mug. And there was a second chair beside Evelyn's. Nathan raised a brow. Who's that one for? Leo grinned. In case she brings someone lonely with her next time. Nathan sat beside him, stunned by the simple logic of a child who'd never learned to guard his hope. Do you really think she'll come again? He asked. Leo didn't hesitate. She already has a seat. Then he handed Nathan a crayon. Want to help color the stars on the ceiling? Nathan took the crayon and nodded. Maybe this wasn't a rescue mission. Maybe it was an invitation. And maybe for the first time in years he was thinking about what it would mean to say yes. Evelyn Cross didn't knock this time. She stood at the curb across the street from the Hale apartment coat collar, upturned a paper bag from the old bookstore tucked under her arm. It was late Sunday morning, the kind where time moved slower, and the air carried the smell of fresh bagels and distant sirens. The city was stretching its limbs. Evelyn was holding her breath. She didn't know what she expected. Perhaps Leo's face pressed against the window again, waving with both hands. Or Nathan opening the door with that quiet suspicion he wore like a second coat. But nothing stirred. She turned to leave. Then she saw it taped to the door of the building, a child's drawing. Faded crayon lines on the back of a grocery receipt. A woman with long yellow hair. A table. 2 chairs. Still there. Still waiting. Inside the apartment, Nathan was scraping toast crumbs into the sink when the knock finally came. Leo darted toward the door before he could say anything. It's her, he shouted. Nathan sighed. Leo, wait. But it was too late. The door flew open and Evelyn stood there a little breathless, a little unsure. Leo hugged her leg instantly. You came back. Evelyn steadied herself, surprised by how much that small gesture mattered. "I did," she said, smiling, "but only because you promised your dad makes the world's best pancakes." Leo turned. "Dad?" She said yes. Nathan appeared in the doorway, face unreadable. "Didn't expect to see you again." Evelyn held up the bookstore bag. "I found something. Thought Leo might like it." Nathan stepped aside, wordlessly letting her in. The book was old hardbound, its cover cracked with time. Architecture for the Young Dreamer. Leo flipped through it with awe, fingers grazing the pages like they might tear from wonder alone. "Where did you find this?" Nathan asked, his voice lower. "Someone gave it to me when I was young," Evelyn replied. "It taught me that blueprints aren't just for buildings, they're for second chances." Nathan looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Leo looked up. "Can I draw buildings with stars in them?" "You can build anything," she said, crouching beside him, "as long as you remember who you're building for." Later, when Leo ran off to color skyscrapers made of marshmallows and moonlight, Evelyn lingered by the table. Nathan handed her a mug of tea without asking what she preferred. "Still don't like silence?" he asked. "I'm learning to listen to it," she said. "It's louder than I thought." Nathan studied her carefully. "You really used to read that book?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. On the nights when the world felt like a locked room. He leaned against the counter. "So, what opened the door?" She hesitated. "I didn't open it. Someone left a chair on the other side." He looked at her for a long time, as if trying to decide whether to believe her. "You don't strike me as someone who needs company. No one needs it until they remember what it feels like to be seen." Nathan's jaw flexed. He looked away. "I've seen people like you before," he said finally. "They show up, taste the warmth, and then vanish when it no longer feels novel. That's fair. So why haven't you vanished?" Evelyn set her mug down gently. "Because last time I walked away, the quiet followed me all the way home." He met her gaze, and for a moment, everything softened. The room, the light, the guarded edges of his posture. "I don't trust easily," he said. "I don't stay easily," she answered. And yet they were both still there. Leo fell asleep early that night, curled on the couch, still holding his half-colored blueprint of a building shaped like a heart. Evelyn watched him as Nathan cleaned the few dishes they used. "He's a good kid," she said softly. Nathan nodded. "I've tried to give him a world that doesn't lie to him." "And have you?" He glanced at her. "I've tried." A pause. Evelyn walked to the window. The city outside pulsed with lives she no longer felt connected to. "My parents were ghosts in tailored suits," she said. "I used to knock on their doors even when they were open." Nathan dried his hands silently. "They adopted me from a state home when I was 8. Put me in boarding school 2 years later because my laughter was too disruptive." She laughed once without humor. "I learned to be quiet. Then I learned to be loud enough to be listened to. But I never learned to be heard." Nathan stepped closer. "Who hears you now?" She looked at him. "Leo does," she whispered, "and you might." The space between them held no promises, only possibility. Nathan exhaled. "You want to come with us tomorrow? Leo has a school open house. He's presenting something called the Chair of Feelings." Evelyn blinked. "The what?" Nathan smirked. "Apparently it's a chair where you sit when you're too full of emotions to talk." She smiled. "Sounds like something the world could use more of." "You sure you're not busy building skyscrapers?" Evelyn paused. "Tomorrow, I'd rather build trust." Nathan didn't reply, but he reached past her and opened the coat closet. He pulled out her scarf, the one she'd left behind that first night. He handed it to her. "We don't keep what isn't ours, but we hold on to it, just in case they come back." She took it carefully. "Then I guess I'm glad I did." And as she stepped out into the evening chill, scarf wrapped around her neck, Evelyn Cross realized something she hadn't in decades. She didn't just visit this place. Some part of her had begun to belong. It had been 17 days since Evelyn Cross first sat at the Hales' kitchen table. Not that she was counting. She told herself it was coincidence dropping by with books Leo might like, checking in with Nathan about city permits he hadn't asked her help with, pausing just long enough to say she was in the neighborhood. But one Tuesday afternoon, as snow gathered softly on the fire escape, Evelyn arrived to find the door already ajar. Inside, laughter. Warm, full-bellied, unpolished laughter. It stopped the moment she stepped inside. Nathan was crouched on the floor helping Leo glue popsicle sticks into a lopsided castle. Leo looked up and grinned. "Miss Evelyn, you're just in time. We're building Fort Feelings." Nathan didn't smile. Instead, he rose slowly and wiped his hands on a dish towel. "You weren't expected today." Evelyn held up a bag. "I brought gingerbread. The real kind, with spice and burnt edges." Leo jumped up. "Did you bring the story?" Evelyn blinked. "What story?" "The one you promised, about the tall building made of glass and sunlight. Remember?" She glanced at Nathan. He was already turning away. "Maybe later," she said softly. "I should come back another time." But Leo grabbed her hand. "You always say that." That word always landed too hard, too honestly. Nathan turned back. "Leo, give us a minute." Leo huffed but obeyed, retreating into his room with his usual whirlwind of crayons and half-eaten cookies. Silence filled the space like fog. Evelyn set the bag on the table. "He asked me to come." "I didn't." The words hit sharper than he probably meant. Evelyn didn't flinch. "I know." Nathan crossed his arms. "Why are you really here?" "Evelyn." She looked at him. Really looked. And then she said the truth, the kind that costs you something. Because I forgot what kindness felt like without strings. And this place, this family, reminded me. Nathan's gaze didn't soften. "I know people like you," he said. "You love projects, especially broken ones." She stepped forward. "I'm not here to fix anything." He laughed once. Bitter. "Come on, you rearrange the whole world just to bring my kid a book. You think I don't notice the subtle offers, the hints, the job leads, the quiet saving. Is it wrong to help? It is, if it's about you." That silenced her. "I don't want Leo getting used to people who leave," he added, voice lower now. He already lost one chair at that table. Evelyn's voice trembled not from weakness but the effort it took to stay calm. "I didn't come here to replace her." "No. You came here because you're lonely, and because this place made you feel something." "But feelings fade when they're inconvenient, Evelyn." She looked down. The scarf Nathan had returned weeks ago was still in her coat pocket, barely touched since. Then she said something so soft it felt like a thread unraveling. "You think I don't want to run?" She looked up, eyes glassy. "Every day I wake up and remind myself not to disappear. That's my default. I vanish. I build walls, towers, empires so high no one can knock." Nathan said nothing. "I left school at 16, she continued. Built my first company from a storage unit. Ate vending machine crackers for a year. No one believed in me. And when they finally did, it was for the wrong reasons. My name, my brand, my profits." Her voice cracked. "But no one ever left a chair for me. Not until Leo. Not until you." Nathan's arms dropped. He leaned on the counter, his expression shifting from defense to something else, regret maybe, or understanding. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Neither do I," he said. "But I know what not to do, and that means protecting him." "I don't blame you." She reached into her coat and pulled out the scarf. Slowly, carefully, she placed it back on the table between them. "I won't force a seat at your table," she said, "but I left a part of myself here. And that part doesn't want to leave." Nathan looked at the scarf. It was the same one she'd worn that first night, the one Leo had picked up when she forgot it. Now it sat between them like a flag. Not surrender, not victory, just a symbol. "I'm not asking for permission," she said, stepping back. "I'm just saying, I'll be here. If you ever decide to need someone, I'll still be around." She turned toward the door, and then, just before stepping out, Nathan said quietly but deliberately, "Next time, bring 2 scarves." She turned, startled. He met her eyes. "In case the guest brings someone lonely, too." And just like that, the frost between them didn't melt. It shifted. Later that night, Evelyn sat in her penthouse again. The scarf was gone, but something warmer had replaced it. A folded crayon drawing. This one had 4 chairs, one empty. And underneath in Leo's jagged print, "Some seats take time, but they're worth the wait." Evelyn read it once, then again. And this time she smiled, not because she felt welcome, but because she finally believed she could stay. It was the first Saturday of March, and sunlight spilled through the apartment windows like an apology for winter. The kind of morning where hope showed up without knocking. Leo was crouched on the living room floor, scissors and hand-cutting stars out of yellow construction paper. Some had 5 points, others 2. One was just a vague blob with a smiley face in the center. Nathan watched from the kitchen, sipping black coffee. "How many stars do we need for the ceiling?" "Kid." Leo grinned without looking up. "As many as it takes to not feel alone at night." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "That many, huh?" Leo nodded. "Miss Evelyn said the sky has room for all kinds of stars, even the weird ones." Nathan said nothing, but he let the words settle in. Evelyn had stopped by twice that week, once with a bag of old puzzle books and again with a box of cookies for no reason at all. She didn't stay long either time. But every time she left, something remained, like the soft scent of her perfume lingering on the coat Leo had draped over her chair, like a question Nathan wasn't ready to answer. At exactly 10:01, the doorbell rang. Leo's face lit up. That's her. Nathan opened the door before he could second-guess himself. Evelyn stood there in jeans and a slate-gray sweater, hair tucked behind one ear, holding a thermos and a small wrapped box. "Good morning," she said almost shyly. "I brought soup. And maybe something else." Leo squealed and pulled her in. "We're making a sky today." Evelyn laughed, handing Nathan the thermos. "Split pea, homemade. Don't worry, I didn't make it." Nathan smirked, relieved already. They settled into their now familiar rhythm. Evelyn sat cross-legged beside Leo, helping tape stars to the ceiling. Nathan stayed at the table, pretending to read the paper but listening to every word. Leo held up a lopsided star. "This one's for Mommy." Evelyn froze, fingers tightening slightly on the roll of tape. "Your mom," Leo nodded. "She's up in the sky now. So I made her a star with a heart inside. Dad says she loved stories." Evelyn looked at Nathan. He met her eyes, then looked away. Leo went on unfazed. "Sometimes I dream she's reading to me. Her voice sounds like warm soup and Saturday." "That sounds beautiful," Evelyn whispered. "I think maybe she left her chair so someone else could sit there," Leo added, tilting his head. "Do you think people do that?" Evelyn blinked, caught off guard. "I think maybe they do. And maybe someone notices the chair is still warm." Nathan exhaled softly. It was one of those moments that said too much without saying anything at all. Later, while Leo napped in his fort of paper stars and couch cushions, Evelyn and Nathan sat at the table. No distractions. Just tea, soft light, and the low hum of trust building between them. "Leo's incredible," Evelyn said. "He doesn't carry things the way other kids do. Not with anger." Nathan stirred his tea slowly. "He carries things. He just turns them into stars instead of stones." Evelyn nodded. "That's a gift." Nathan looked at her. "So is showing up when you're afraid." The words hung there. She met his gaze. "I've spent my whole life trying not to need anyone. And the truth is, I wouldn't have come back if Leo hadn't left that chair for me. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Why did you come back the second time? She hesitated, then answered with absolute honesty. Because I wanted someone to miss me. And I think he did. Nathan didn't smile, but his eyes softened. You were right, he said after a moment. About chairs. She frowned. What do you mean? He looked down at his mug. I used to think the hardest part was building a life for Leo. But the truth is, it's been building a space where someone might want to stay. He paused. You made space, Evelyn said softly. I didn't think I had, he admitted. You did, she said, and I noticed. They sat in that truth for a while, not moving, not filling the silence, just allowing it to hold what neither of them had been brave enough to name. Finally, Evelyn reached into her bag and slid the small box across the table. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You brought a present. It's not much, she said, but it's a beginning. He opened it. Inside was a brass key, slightly worn. Not shiny, not new. She explained. It's the key to a space on the Lower East Side. I bought the building last year. It was supposed to be a luxury condo project, but I backed out. The space has good bones. Nathan stared at her uncertain. I saw your old drawings, she continued. The community center concept, the one with the rooftop garden and reading room. I thought, maybe this key could unlock more than just a door. Nathan closed the box. Evelyn. I'm not asking for favors. I'm not offering one, she said gently. I'm offering a partnership. A place where Leo's stars can glow on real ceilings. A long pause. Then he said quietly, I don't know how to thank you. You don't, she replied. You just show up. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Then, without breaking eye contact, he did something unexpected. He reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was grounding. It was real. That night, as Evelyn walked back toward her driver, she glanced up at the building one last time. From the window, a paper star had been taped, its corner curling slightly in the breeze. Written across it in blue marker, Hope lives here. And for the first time in years, Evelyn believed maybe it lived in her too. The snow returned without warning. By dusk, the streets of Brooklyn were blanketed in white. Shop signs glowed through the flurries and headlights moved slowly through the silence like ghosts. It was the kind of night where people stayed in, found warmth, stayed close. Evelyn Cross stood outside the Hale apartment building holding a small thermos and a folded umbrella she never opened. Snow collected on her shoulders, but she didn't seem to notice. She was still as someone standing at the edge of a cliff, not afraid to fall, but afraid to jump. Inside, the lights were on. She could hear muffled laughter, the clatter of dishes, the faint echo of a TV left running too loud. She knocked once, twice. The door opened quickly. Nathan stood there, sleeves rolled up, hair messy, a dish towel slung over one shoulder. You're soaked, he said. She looked down, almost surprised to find herself wet. I didn't notice. He stepped aside. Come in before you turn into a snowman. She moved past him, silent. Inside, Leo was curled up on the couch, a thick blanket tucked under his chin. His cheeks were flushed, his nose pink. A cartoon played in the background, forgotten. He's been sick since last night, Nathan said, lowering his voice. Low fever, nothing dangerous. But he's not sleeping well. Evelyn knelt beside the couch. Hey, sweetheart, she whispered. Leo blinked his eyes open, smiled faintly. You came. I promised I'd help hang the stars, she said, brushing a curl off his forehead. We can do that when you're better. He reached for her hand. Will you still be here tomorrow? She squeezed gently. I'll be here as long as you want me. Leo nodded and drifted back to sleep. Nathan watched her from across the room. She rose slowly and walked to the kitchen. He followed, handing her a mug. You okay? Evelyn nodded. Just tired. They sat across from each other in the quiet. The radiator hissed in protest. Snow fell outside like time had stopped, and then, without warning, Evelyn's breath hitched. She pressed her palm to her eyes as if to stop something from escaping. Nathan sat forward. "Hey, I'm fine." "You're not." She shook her head. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "What wasn't? I wasn't supposed to feel this much." She looked at him now, eyes glistening, voice breaking in all the places she usually kept hidden. "I spent years perfecting distance, being needed but never needing, giving but never expecting. And now, this boy draws me stars and saves me a chair, and I—" She stopped. Nathan didn't speak. So she did what she had never done in front of anyone. She cried, silently, fully. Not graceful tears, but raw, aching human sobs that came from somewhere old and buried. Nathan didn't try to fix it. He just sat with her. After a while, she found her breath again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be." She laughed once shaky. "Leo will think I'm a mess. He'll think you're real." She looked up. "Is that enough?" Nathan leaned forward, elbows on the table. "It's everything." They sat in the warmth of shared vulnerability, two people no longer pretending to be fine. "I used to think strength was silence," Evelyn said quietly. "Now I think it's showing up anyway." Nathan smiled faintly. "You're showing up." She met his eyes. "So are you." A beat passed. Then Evelyn pulled something from her coat pocket, a small envelope sealed with a wax stamp. Nathan frowned. "What's this?" "An invitation," she said, "to something I've never done before." He opened it. Inside was a single card, a community design proposal. By Nathan Hale, for a place where everyone belongs. He stared at it. "I submitted it," she said, "to the city's redevelopment board, under my name, with your authorship." Nathan looked stunned. "You—" "What I used a contact. They'll review it next month. It's a long shot, but it's real." He looked down at the card again. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," she replied. "Just promise me something. Anything. If you build this, if they approve it, leave one room unfinished." He raised a brow. "Why?" She smiled gently. "So someone else can finish it. Someone who needs to believe they belong." Nathan leaned back, the weight of what she'd done settling over him. "You know," he said slowly, "when I lost my wife, I thought that was it. The world got quieter and I got smaller. I lived for Leo, but I didn't grow." Evelyn listened, heart open. "And then you came in like thunder," he added. "Loud, brilliant, disruptive, and suddenly there was room again. Room for stars, for stories, for dinner at the same table with someone who understands the silence." She blinked hard. "You make things bigger again," he finished. She looked down. "So do you." He reached across the table again like he had once before. But this time she met him halfway. Their hands found each other not as strangers or guests, but as something closer. Something not yet defined, but deeply known. And in that quiet kitchen beside a sleeping child and a window frosted with hope, Evelyn Cross was no longer a woman who only visited warmth. She was sitting in it. For once not to escape the cold, but because she had chosen to stay. The news broke on a Wednesday. The kind of Wednesday where the sky was colorless and the wind carried no intention but to sting. Evelyn stood in the boardroom of Crosstech Real Estate, the sharp scent of espresso and expensive ink filling the air as if trying to cover the staleness of what was about to happen. A proposal was being passed around, clean, cold, efficient, a $42 million smart building to replace an aging neighborhood on the Lower East Side. Solar-powered, app-integrated, security-optimized. Perfect on paper. But Evelyn couldn't breathe, because she knew that address. She knew that building. It was Leo's building, Nathan's home, the hallway with the squeaky third stair, the door where Leo had taped his stars, The kitchen where Evelyn had cried for the first time in 2 decades, and now her name was on the heading of the demolition notice. Cross-Tech Redevelopment Initiative, Phase 1. Miss Cross, one of the partners, said we're on schedule to vote. We've already secured 3 tenants to vacate. Evelyn's voice didn't come at first, then finally, quietly but firmly, she said, "Table it." The room paused. "I'm sorry," the CFO asked, blinking. "Table it," she repeated, "until further notice." "You can't. Someone started." "I can," she said, "and I will." She stood. A dozen executives followed her with confused, irritated stares as she walked out. But Evelyn didn't care, because somewhere on the Lower East Side a 6-year-old boy was probably cutting paper stars, and she was about to shatter his sky. By the time she reached the apartment building, the sky had turned the color of bruised peaches, neither day nor night, just in between. But something was different. The door was closed, locked, and taped to it, fluttering gently in the late wind, was a letter written in crayon. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Miss Evelyn. "I heard Daddy on the phone. He thinks I don't listen, but I do. He said, our building is going away because someone pushed a paper too far. Was it your paper? It's okay if it was. I just want to say thank you for sitting in the chair. I think maybe you're sad because you're always holding everything. Maybe you're tired. I hope you rest. It's okay not to come back. I understand. Leo P.S. I left 1 star taped under the table. It's yours if you want it. P.P.S. Chairs are still here just in case." Evelyn read it once, then twice. Her hands shook. Her breath caught somewhere between shame and heartbreak, and for the first time in her adult life, Evelyn Cross leaned her forehead against a chipped apartment door and whispered, "I'm sorry." But the door didn't open, because they were already gone. Nathan hadn't answered his phone. Not in hours. Not since the letter. Evelyn called everyone she could. Melissa, her assistant, ran a search. Eviction notice filed last week. Unpaid increase due to zoning review. They didn't tell me, Evelyn said, pacing. Melissa hesitated. They probably didn't know you were behind it. I wasn't, Evelyn snapped. Then softer. Not on purpose. She spent the rest of the day chasing whispers, old phone numbers, mutual contacts, even the building's super, who muttered something about a friend with a spare couch up in Astoria. But it was like chasing light through fog. And then, at midnight, just when she was about to give up, she opened her purse and found something at the bottom. A crumpled napkin drawn on with marker. A map. Leo had made it, weeks ago. A treasure hunt for the park where he and his dad liked to sit and count buses. He'd written on it, "Just in case you ever want to find us when we're hiding." Evelyn stared at it. Then she grabbed her coat. The church shelter sat at the end of a quiet block tucked between a laundromat and a deli that smelled like burnt onions and hope. Inside, it was warm, dimly lit, and hushed with the sound of people pretending not to be lost. Evelyn stepped through the doors, eyes adjusting. And there, on the far side, beneath a bulletin board covered in faded flyers, sat Nathan. He was folding a blanket for Leo, who was curled up on a narrow cot, sound asleep. Nathan didn't look up, until she spoke. "I got your letter." He froze. Then, slowly, he turned. "Too late," he said, voice low. "I know." Leo cried himself to sleep. "I deserve that." Nathan stood. "You said you weren't here to fix things, but you broke them anyway. I didn't know you had power, and you used it without looking." Evelyn's voice shook. "I tried to stop it. The moment I saw, but you didn't see before." "Evelyn," he snapped, "that's the difference. You show up when it's poetic, when the chair's waiting. But this is real life. Rent, rooms, shelter. I didn't come to ask forgiveness." He blinked. "No, I came to ask if there's still a seat, even if it's on the floor." Nathan stared at her. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully, and his voice softened. "He still left you a star." Evelyn closed her eyes. "I saw." Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. She unfolded it. It was a drawing. Her, him, Leo, the church shelter, but drawn like a castle, the windows glowing, the stars above it brighter than any she'd seen him draw before. Underneath, in Leo's blocky scrawl, home is not a place. It's people who don't run. Evelyn clutched the paper to her chest. "I'm not running," she said. "Then stay," Nathan replied. "But not because you're trying to undo something." He looked her in the eyes. "Stay because you believe in what's still left." And she did. With all her heart, for the very first time, she did. The shelter smelled like overcooked rice and paper prayers. Evelyn hadn't left since midnight. She'd pulled a chair into the far corner next to Leo's cot and sat with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Not because she was cold, but because for the first time in years she didn't want to be anywhere else. Morning light crept through stained glass windows, soft and uncertain, as if it wasn't sure it was welcome in a place like this. Leo stirred, rubbing his eyes. Evelyn straightened her heart, a quiet drumbeat. He blinked at her, then smiled, sleepy sincere. "You stayed." She nodded, voice catching. "Of course." He sat up slowly, looking around the room. "It's not home, but Daddy says people can be home too." Evelyn bit her lip, fighting the swell in her chest. "Your daddy's a very wise man." Leo looked at her with the bluntness only children have. "Are you staying for breakfast? They have square eggs." "I've never had a square egg," she replied. "They taste like circles but feel like corners," he said solemnly. She laughed gently, freely. And somewhere across the room, Nathan turned coffee in hand, watching them like a man who'd tried not to hope and failed. Later that day, Evelyn made a decision. Not the kind that made headlines, the kind that made room. She returned to Crosstech. Her name was still etched in glass at the building's entrance, still echoed in the marble floors and the soundless elevators. But everything inside her had changed. She called an emergency board meeting. They weren't happy. "Too bad. I'm withdrawing our support from the Phase 1 redevelopment," she said. Effective immediately. Silence. Then chaos. "You can't do that. You signed off. We've already locked in funders." Evelyn raised a hand. Calm. Sharp, final. "The city doesn't need another smart building," she said. "It needs a true one built on community, on listening, on staying." The room stared. "I'm allocating personal funds to back a new project. One that was already designed, just never heard." She held up Nathan's blueprint. A community center. Affordable housing on top. Rooftop gardens, classrooms, reading rooms. Spaces where people don't just live, they belong. Someone scoffed. "You think your redemption story is enough to justify killing a multi-million-dollar plan?" Evelyn met his eyes. "I'm not interested in redemption. I'm interested in building something worth staying for." The silence this time wasn't chaos. It was respect. That evening she returned to the shelter. But it wasn't just to visit. She came with keys. Nathan looked at the worn brass in her hand and raised an eyebrow. "You planning to build us a castle?" "Something better," she said. "A home." He hesitated. "We've been through a lot, Evelyn. Leo and we don't bounce back as easily as people think." "I'm not asking you to bounce," she replied. "I'm asking if I can walk alongside you while we rebuild." He looked at her. Really looked. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the key, not as a transaction but as a gesture, like he was letting her in. Finally. "You're not the same woman who first knocked on our door," he said. "I know." Leo darted between them with his coat half-zipped. "Are we going to see it?" Evelyn smiled. "We're going to build it." They walked the property that weekend. The building was tired, its bones creaking from years of being ignored. But there was something noble about it, too, like a story waiting to be rewritten. Leo ran through the halls, arms outstretched like wings. "Can I pick the color of the reading room?" Nathan looked at Evelyn. "He's already made himself CEO. He has good instincts," she replied. They found an old room near the front, empty, dusty, but full of light. Evelyn stopped. This was the front office. Nathan nodded. I used to dream of turning it into a listening room, just a place where people could talk and know someone's hearing them. Evelyn touched the windowsill where sunlight danced across the cracked paint. Let's keep it that way. They stood there quiet until Leo appeared again holding a folding chair he found in a storage closet. I brought a chair, he said proudly, just in case someone shows up. Nathan laughed. For who, Bud? Leo shrugged. For the next Evelyn. Evelyn froze. Then she smiled, because she understood. That chair didn't represent who she had been. It was for someone else, someone not yet here, someone who might need what she once did a place. A pause. A promise. She crouched beside Leo and said, "That's the most important chair in the whole building." He beamed. Nathan watched her quiet a question blooming behind his eyes. "You sure you're ready for this?" Evelyn turned to him. "I'm not just ready," she said. "I'm home." And as they stood in the middle of a broken building surrounded by old walls and new dreams, something beautiful happened. The blueprint of their future wasn't made of concrete or contracts. It was made of courage. It was made of trust. It was made of people who chose to stay. And one little boy who always kept a chair open, just in case. The first brick was metaphorical. It came not with cement or ceremony, but with the sound of Evelyn Cross knocking again on a door that wasn't hers. Only this time it wasn't to ask or to take. It was to invite. "Leo drew this," she said, holding up a hand-colored flyer. "It says, 'Come build something with us.'" He added a sun, 2 stick figures, and what I think is a dinosaur. Nathan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with that same mix of amusement and awe she was starting to crave. "Are you recruiting construction workers with crayons now?" "They're more persuasive than contracts," she replied. "And cheaper." Evelyn laughed. "You'd be surprised. He charges in Oreos." Nathan stepped aside. "You're early. I'm excited." He nodded. "Me too." The lot had changed since their first visit. Old boards had been removed, graffiti scrubbed. The weeds which had once claimed the walls like an uprising were now cleared. In their place, chalk outlines, measuring tape, and hope. A community effort was underway. Neighbors had shown up. A retired plumber. A single mom who offered to cook for volunteers. 2 high school kids with more enthusiasm than skill, but hearts big enough to lift beams. Nathan stood with a clipboard directing traffic like a conductor without a baton. 3 pallets of brick arriving by noon, he said. Paint samples in the office. Leo's been supervising the welcome mural. Evelyn glanced across the lot. Leo stood on a step stool with a paintbrush twice the size of his hand tongue sticking out in concentration as he added stars to a wall painted blue. She smiled. "How's the speech?" Nathan asked, nudging her gently. "What speech?" He raised an eyebrow. "The press arrives at 5. Evelyn groaned. "I was hoping that part was optional. You're the face of this place." "No," she said, turning toward the construction, the laughter, the dust catching in the sunlight like magic. "This is the face of it." Nathan looked at her then, longer, deeper. "You've changed," he said. She turned back a quiet fire behind her eyes. "I've remembered who I was before I forgot." He didn't respond. He just reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. At 4:58 p.m., the lot buzzed with a nervous kind of joy. Kids holding balloons, neighbors in mismatched lawn chairs, a folding table with lemonade and a crooked sign, "Welcome Home Project." A local journalist adjusted her mic. Cameramen found their angles. Evelyn stepped up to a makeshift podium, a stack of shipping crates draped in a banner painted by Leo and friends. It read, "Room for Everyone." She looked out at the crowd. Her breath caught. She wasn't used to speaking from the heart. But maybe that was the point. 6 months ago, she began. I sat alone in the penthouse of a building I owned. It had all the smart features but none of the warmth. I could control the temperature from my phone, but I couldn't control the loneliness. A pause. Then she continued. I met a boy who saved me a seat at his table. Just one seat. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't planned. It was open. That one gesture rewrote everything I thought I knew about home. She glanced at Leo, who was seated cross-legged in the front row, grinning. Home, she said, her voice steady, is not walls or wealth. It's the courage to keep a chair open, to listen, to stay. Applause rose like a wave, not thunderous but honest. Nathan joined her as the press filtered through, asking questions, snapping photos. But all Evelyn could focus on was the breeze against her skin, the smell of sawdust and paint, and the hum of voices around her voices that once had no place to speak. Later that evening, when the crowd had thinned and twilight had settled like a soft blanket, Evelyn found herself alone in the listening room. It was nearly finished now. The floors had been sanded, the shelves half filled. One corner, still unfinished, deliberately left bare, waiting for someone else to decide what it should become. She sat in a single chair positioned in the center of the room. Footsteps approached behind her. I thought I'd find you here, Nathan said. She didn't turn. Instead, she asked, Do you think it's working? He moved closer. The building. No. Us. Nathan sat beside her. Do you remember what you said the night I cried in your kitchen? He smiled faintly. I said you were real. She nodded. You made me believe it. He reached for her hand again. This time, both of theirs were steady. You don't need to fix everything to deserve to stay, he said. You just need to keep showing up. She looked at him and whispered, Then I'm here. The room was quiet, but it wasn't empty, because sometimes the truest kind of love doesn't come in grand declarations. It comes in presence, in a chair pulled closer, in a hand not letting go, and in a whisper so soft it could only be heard by someone who had finally learned how to listen. The sky was velvet and full of stars, real ones this time. Not cut from paper, not taped to a ceiling, but wide and unfiltered, stretching endlessly above the rooftop of the half-renovated community center. Leo lay on a sleeping bag beside a telescope someone had donated, whispering names for constellations that didn't exist. That one looks like a dancing waffle, he said, pointing. Nathan chuckled. You've got quite the imagination, bud. Evelyn sat cross-legged nearby, her blazer traded for a simple sweater, hair loosely tied back. She wasn't looking at the stars. She was looking at them, at the boy who had opened the first door, at the man who had let her stay. You know, Leo said, staring up, I used to think rich people didn't get cold. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Why? Because they always looked warm in movies, Leo replied. But I think they just had someone next to them. That's what keeps people warm. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Nathan glanced at her but said nothing, because Leo had just said the thing neither of them had dared to. Later, after Leo had fallen asleep in his sleeping bag, his hand still holding a flashlight and a half-eaten cookie, Nathan pulled 2 folding chairs closer to the edge of the roof. He handed Evelyn a cup of cocoa. Real cocoa, from real milk. I didn't know you could cook, she teased. I didn't. The woman downstairs did, he admitted. I bribed her with a month of free tutoring for her twins. Evelyn laughed. Resourceful. That's my job description, he said. Then after a pause, and survival skill. They sat in silence for a moment, the city breathing around them, traffic, humming lights blinking like distant lighthouses. Do you miss your old life? Nathan asked. Evelyn sipped her cocoa. Sometimes. Mostly the silence. He looked surprised. I used to think silence meant peace. She continued, but it was just loneliness disguised as luxury. Nathan nodded slowly. I used to think chaos meant failure. They both smiled, because now surrounded by paint cans, sticky notes, community volunteers, and a very opinionated 6-year-old, they knew better. Do you ever get scared? She asked. Nathan's gaze didn't leave hers. Only when I start to believe this might actually last." She swallowed. Hard. "Nathan," she said softly, "I'm not going anywhere." His eyes searched hers. "You sure?" She took a shaky breath. "I've spent years building things that were supposed to last forever. Buildings, systems, empires. But they were always one storm away from crumbling." She reached over and took his hand. "This, whatever this is, it doesn't feel like something I built. It feels like something I finally found." Nathan looked down at their hands. "Leo keeps asking if you're moving in," he said with a smirk. Evelyn blinked. "And I told him that grown-ups take longer to unpack their fears than their furniture." She smiled gently knowingly. "Well," she said, "maybe it's time I started unpacking." They sat there in the hush of the city. Hands clasped the rooftop cold, but the space between them warm. Then Nathan turned to her. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "The night you first came to dinner, what were you running from?" Evelyn was quiet. Then she answered, not like a CEO but like a woman who had run out of armor. "I wasn't running," she whispered. "I was falling, and I didn't know it, until someone pulled up a chair." He looked at her, like really looked. Then gently he reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Stay tonight," he said. "Not as a guest, not as someone fixing something, just as Evelyn." She looked down at the rooftop, at Leo curled up and dreaming, at the city that no longer felt like a fortress, and then back at Nathan, whose eyes held nothing but quiet, patient truth. She didn't speak. She just leaned in and rested her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that until the sky began to bleed with morning. No declarations, no grand confessions, just presence, just peace, just two people who had both finally stopped running. And beneath them, a single paper star, old and curling at the edges, still clung to the wall just beside the listening room's window, as if to say, some chairs never go empty. They're just waiting for the right heart to come home. The wind carried a quiet hum that morning, neither cold nor warm, just gentle. The kind of breeze that feels like a memory brushing past your skin. The ribbon, stretched across the entrance to the newly completed center, fluttered slightly, tugged playfully by the breeze. It was red, bright, and new, tied with a bow that Leo had insisted on triple knotting, so no grown-up messes it up before I say go. Evelyn stood to the side in a soft navy coat holding the scissors Leo had painted with gold stars. Her hair danced slightly in the wind. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not looking for cameras or donors or headlines. Just one face. "Over here," Leo shouted from the front row, waving both arms like he was hailing an invisible spaceship. Beside him, Nathan smiled, one hand resting on Leo's shoulder, the other tucked into the coat Evelyn had once said made him look reliably stubborn. Evelyn stepped up to the ribbon, heart steady. The crowd grew silent. Not from obligation, but anticipation. She took a breath and turned toward them. "We built this place," she began, "with bricks and sweat and setbacks. But the truth is, it was already being built long before the first wall went up." She looked toward Nathan and Leo. It started with a child's invitation. A dinner, a seat, a question I didn't realize I'd been waiting my whole life to be asked, "Do you want to have dinner with us?" The crowd chuckled softly, warmly. "It was just one chair," Evelyn continued. "But it held more than food, it held space. For grief, for grace, for growing." She paused. "And now this building stands not just because of plans or money, but because of people who believed that leaving a chair open might just save someone." She turned to Leo. "Would you do the honors?" Leo beamed and ran to her side, grabbing the scissors with both hands like he was cutting through a portal to something new. "Okay, everybody," he shouted. On the count of 3, the crowd laughed. 1, 2, 3. The ribbon snapped clean. Applause rang out like wind chimes in a summer storm, joyful, unscripted, free. Evelyn stepped back and Nathan came to stand beside her. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected, eyes misting. He looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly, "So, you still running?" She shook her head. "I stopped the night I stayed." Nathan smiled. So did I. They turned to watch Leo dash through the double doors into the community center, leading a wave of children behind him. Inside the building had come to life. Mosaics on the walls, a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and soup, a library nook with pillows hand-stitched by grandmothers who insisted that no child should ever read on cold floors, a classroom with windows that let the light in no matter the weather outside, and in the center of it, all the listening room. Quiet, warm, simple. 2 chairs faced each other. One had a book resting on its arm. The other had nothing but a note scrawled in Leo's handwriting, "Sit here if you want to be heard." Evelyn walked over and sat in the empty chair. She placed a folded photo on the table between them. It was a candid her Nathan and Leo sitting on the rooftop weeks ago, wrapped in blankets and laughing at something no one remembered. Nathan sat across from her, quiet. Then after a pause, he said, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For staying. For choosing us." Evelyn smiled soft and deep. "I didn't choose you," she whispered. "I remembered you." He frowned, slightly unsure. She continued, "When I was young, I used to sit by a window and wonder if anyone would ever knock. Not for business, not for brilliance, just for me." She looked into his eyes. "When Leo asked me to dinner, I didn't realize he was answering a question I'd stopped asking." Nathan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You're not the same woman who showed up that night," he said. "I hope not." "You're better." They sat in silence for a moment, not because they didn't have more to say, but because the most important things had already been said. That evening, after the celebration had quieted and the building had emptied, Evelyn stood by the entrance, locking up the glass doors. She turned and saw Leo asleep in Nathan's arms, his face buried in his dad's coat. Nathan adjusted the boy, gently cradling him like something sacred. "You coming home with us?" he asked, his voice low. Evelyn hesitated. Then she looked over her shoulder into the building. The lights dimmed. The walls warm. The air still humming with laughter. And beside the door, a bench. On it, a small plaque had been installed just hours before. She hadn't known about it until now. She stepped closer and read, "For everyone still waiting for someone to stay." She turned back to Nathan and nodded. "I'm already home." Weeks later. On a chilly afternoon, a man in tattered clothes stood outside the center staring at the door. He looked unsure, too many days behind him, too few ahead. Leo opened the door. "Hi," the boy said. "Are you looking for someone?" The man shook his head. "Just passing." Leo tilted his head. "We have food, and seats, and a really good couch." The man hesitated. "I'm not sure I belong." Leo smiled gently. "We always keep a chair open, just in case." And inside, Evelyn looked up from her desk. She watched the man step in, not as a client, but as someone whose story had just found its place. Because in this building, in this life, and in the hearts that dared to stay, no chair ever stayed empty for long. Absolutely. Here is a heartfelt and emotionally resonant outro plus call to action, perfectly tailored to follow the ending of your story and designed to drive high engagement and connection with your audience. If this story touched your heart even just a little, we'd love to know. What part stayed with you the most, and where in the world are you watching from? Leave a comment below. Your words truly matter. And if you believe in stories that heal, that bring light and remind us of the power of kindness, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another moment like this. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching. Until next time, keep a chair open, someone might just need it. See you in the next story.